Before I start this video and actually get into what I want to talk about, I want to say when I'm discussing certain artists, musicians, whoever in this video, I'm not trying to do this in a parasocial way. I am talking specifically about my interactions and how I engage with their art. I'm not trying to act like I know them personally or I have some strong connection to them. I understand we are strangers, we do not know each other, we will probably never personally know each other. So I want to make it very clear, I am not trying to be parasocial with this. I am specifically talking about how I kind of interact with and engage and relate to the art that these certain artists, musicians make. I want to make that clear before I start. But I think that there's kind of three things that have kind of converged for me to want me to make this video in the first place. There were two videos posted on TikTok by Cursed and Tormented White Boy, and the takes that she has on one of them was artists queerbaiting in a way that actually adds to their art or actually is thought-provoking and things along the lines of that. And then nu metal artists and how they got really clowned on for being men, talking about, the struggles they face in life, their emotional vulnerability, things like that. And I'm going to include both of the videos in this to give you the full context as to what I'm going to be talking about.
One of my many opinions on art and culture that would make people think that I'm crazy is that I don't think that there's anything wrong with queerbaiting as long as it is done in a way that is tasteful and thought-provoking and edgy and political. In fact, I kind of struggle to think of a heterosexual artist that I think was a genuinely great, groundbreaking artist who did not kind of queerbait at some point in their career. Like Sinead O'Connor, Trent Reznor, Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode were doing some crazy queerbaiting that I don't think I've seen before or since. And as far as I know, and I could be wrong, so don't drag me in the comments if I'm wrong, those people were functionally heterosexual and live heterosexual lifestyles. I'd also argue that you can kind of queerbait yourself into being queer, or at the very least being a gay icon. I've said before many times that I was completely obsessed with the basketball player Dennis Rodman growing up, and he was supreme queerbaiter. Nobody queerbaited the way that he did. And he was also a genuine, non-performative ally in an era and a space where that would get you exiled from society. At one point, he dyed the AIDS awareness ribbon into his buzz cut. But I think the major difference between a lot of these people and the queerbaiting artists that we have now is that, in that era, it was genuinely shocking to do this kind of stuff. Whereas, now if you pretend to be bisexual, it's kind of just okay, whatever, oh yeah, you're bisexual, and so is every other woman on campus. I'm not saying that to diss bisexual women, I'm just saying that's how people perceive it. Which is why I think that it was actually very groundbreaking when Charli XCX said, no, I'm not bisexual. Nu metal is a genre that has been really critically reevaluated over the last couple of years, and while I'm certainly happy about that, I don't think that a lot of people have thoroughly examined exactly why nu metal was so hated and mocked in the first place. Now, obviously, a lot of nu metal was very corny, no pun intended, very edgy, kind of immature, but so is black metal and death metal and all of these other metal genres. And I think that it's funny that nu metal was kind of singled out as the poser genre of metal, because when you listen to songs by Norwegian black metal bands, these guys haven't experienced anything that they are talking about in these songs. Euronymous from Mayhem was a sheltered rich kid. But if you listen to a lot of nu metal songs, the lyrics are not rah rah, blood, gut, Satan, rah rah. It's very personal and earnest. A lot of these guys were writing songs about growing up in poverty in a trailer park, struggling with societal expectations of masculinity, being abused as a kid, especially sexual abuse. Linkin Park and Korn and Marilyn Manson all have songs about these kind of topics. Obviously Marilyn Manson is a more complex case because he did go on to become an abuser himself, but regardless, he's still an example of what I'm talking about. And on a similar note, people really hated emo. There was a ton of vitriol spewed towards emos, but particularly emo guys. There was actually a period of time where hate crimes against young emo guys were so widespread in Iraq that there is a Wikipedia article on it. Young guys were literally getting killed for dressing in this manner and listening to this music. I don't know how many of you guys are even old enough to remember this, but there was this video that went viral on YouTube back in the day that was called the Emo Kid song. And I'll admit it, I laughed when I first heard that song, but I am astounded that that video has never been taken down for hate speech. Because, you can pause to read this.
And then also, I've just been really listening to a lot of Depeche Mode recently. When I'm at work, one of the three things that I just keep listening to on repeat is a Depeche Mode playlist with just their songs on it. The other two are a Nine Inch Nails playlist, and then just rain sounds. Really, that's all I've been listening to at work recently. And I was kind of reflecting, thinking about why I really do feel a stronger connection to bands, artists like Nine Inch Nails, Depeche Mode, and how certain bands or musicians or artists become my favorite. And I think it comes down to several different things, but the ones that are immediately coming off the top of my head is obviously I like how their music sounds. That's very basic. I think the topics that they talk about and engage with in their music are interesting, and I also feel a kind of shared type of vulnerability, I guess, within the music, art, lyrics that these musicians make. In my opinion, for me to listen, like to, I guess, become a more involved, deeper fan instead of just like a casual fan, an important part of that to me is to have the music that they're making, stick out to me in a way that I go back to it and keep seeking it out, where it has to be kind of, I guess, memorable in some type of way. Like, it has to be, stuck in my head a bit. And then but and then after engaging with, a certain song or certain album for however long, it leads me to listen to more and more of their music. I think that is part of it. Like, it just has to sound interesting, I guess. Like, and then also I feel like the lyrics are also very important, because for Depeche Mode specifically, they cover a lot of topics in their music. The most common topics they talk about, at least in my opinion, are love, the complexities of the relationships we have, intimacy, struggles with mental health and addiction. They talk about politics. They talk a lot about like vulnerability, complicated relationships with religion, and these are all topics that I find very interesting and that I enjoy talking about and engaging with. And I think it's also the way that Depeche Mode presents these topics within their music and within their songs just really kind of sticks out to me in a way that I really feel like sticks out to me in a way that I really want to engage with it, and that I feel like even when I can't apply these lyrics to personal parts of my own life, it still sticks with me in a way that leaves me reflecting on what I've heard. I mean, I think there obviously is an element of like relating to a lot of the songs, a lot of the lyrics that Depeche Mode has. Um, like I mentioned before, a type of shared vulnerability within their art. In a way, I think I've found to phrase this that best fits for like how I view it is kind of like as you're listening to, as well, at least as I'm listening to their music, it feels like I'm sitting on like a public bus late at night, and I'm like crying, and it's obvious that I've been dealing with something, and then looking over at a stranger who's sitting across from you on the bus, and they kind of give you this look or this kind of acknowledgement that they understand what you're going through, or that they acknowledge what you're dealing with, and that you know they've seen it and they've kind of felt that before. And having that kind of shared moment of understanding and vulnerability that isn't taken advantage of, or I guess exploited with a stranger. I guess that's kind of how I personally would explain it, I guess. Because it's Depeche Mode, the way they write their lyrics and the way that they present their music, the way they write it, it adds, I guess, more to the, I guess, relatability or type of understanding, like connection I feel towards the music that they write, towards the art that they make. I think that it's important that it's not just really like just straight up saying exactly what they mean within their art. It's written in a way where you can kind of sink into it and find a lot of nuances and different ways to interpret it that, you know, maybe you can apply it to your own life, maybe you can apply it to whatever, but I just think that, you know, it really does feel like listening to their music, you know, feeling seen within my own personal experiences, or just kind of generally feeling seen or having thoughts be provoked with topics that I find very interesting that I want to explore. I do write a lot of short stories. I enjoy writing short stories. I mentioned this in my last video, the project I did for one of my English classes, that I'm an English major. And I think that artists like Depeche Mode and Nine Inch Nails, the two of them have really done a lot of inspiration for me when it comes to having like ideas for short stories, or hearing like a certain song or certain lyrics or the way that it's presented, and then that kind of leading me down into my own stories that are kind of inspired by what they make. So there's obviously also the element that like Depeche Mode really does inspire me with their music. And I'm not sure how I'm going to fit this into the video, but I do have a quote from James Baldwin that I'm going to put somewhere on the screen as I read it off from here. And it says, "You read something which you thought only happened to you, and you discover that it happened 100 years ago to Dostoevsky. This is a very great liberation for the suffering, struggling person who always thinks that he is alone. This is why art is important." And I do think that when you discover an artist who makes their art about, you know, personal experiences, things that they've struggled with, and then you kind of see your own reflection of your life and what you've dealt with and what you've experienced within that, it does really feel like a big liberation. It really feels like thinking for your whole life that you're the only one who's had to deal with this, that you're the only one who's had to experience this, and then realizing that there's people who have been dealing with this struggle, you know, for however long, right? Decades before you were even born, for in my case with Depeche Mode. There's like an element of genuine vulnerability and true passion that you can feel within their art. It doesn't feel as if it's, I guess, somebody writing about something that, you know, they might have never experienced, or even just making the music, not really feeling passionate about it. You know, it kind of like they're only making this because they want money. I guess how it could be described is kind of like soulless. But with Depeche Mode, it just really does, to me, it's very clear that they have a genuine passion and genuine experience with what they've gone through. Like, they have genuinely felt these struggles with, you know, religion and religious beliefs, addiction, trying to navigate love and relationships and intimacy in a, you know, rapidly changing world, and how human relationships are often presented in a very certain way that doesn't really reflect how they are in real life, and how that can kind of, I guess, warp or change how someone thinks relationships should be, or how they try to navigate relationships in their own life without having that understanding, that it's going to be different, I guess. Because I don't know why this is coming to mind right now, but there's been a discussion for a while about how a lot of country music artists like to sing songs about, you know, like being farmers, being working class, saying things like that, and then you do research into the background. They've never been a farmer, they've never been working class, and you can kind of tell you can kind of like see that that's reflected within their music, and I feel like you don't see that with Depeche Mode. You can tell even when you can tell that even in the parts of their music that aren't just like lyrics, you know, the instrumental parts, that they are putting genuine passion behind what they're making, and they genuinely do have this artistic vision, and that they want to express it in a way that feels, I guess, authentic to them in a sense. I feel like might explain it well, I'm not sure. The last thing I'm going to touch on in this video is how I feel like in my personal life, for an artist, musician, band to become like one of my favorite bands, or just to have them be a part of like my daily life in this, you know, in the sense of you're a huge fan of this band, is having that kind of, I guess, understanding or appreciation for the type of art that they make and the types of things that they explore within that art. You know, that James Baldwin quote, I have it written right here, which I keep looking down at. That is really kind of how I feel about having a band become my favorite band, where it goes beyond just enjoying how the music sounds. It's also having some type of, I guess, understanding, or, you know, being aware of their like themes, what they're trying to communicate, or just kind of having this shared vulnerability or this shared experience, in a sense, that, you know, you've never met each other, you know, they've made this art like however many decades before you were even alive, but you can still feel that this experience that you thought you've only had has been felt by other artists before you. And just kind of how, you know, the music feels so much like a lot more special. The music feels a lot more special when you have that type of connection or understanding to it. I'm not sure if this video is gonna make like any sense to anybody else. It's pretty much just me talking to a camera, trying to explain or work out my thoughts. So I don't know if anybody's gonna care about this. It's just, again, it's just me kind of talking about my experience and kind of relatability to Depeche Mode and the type of music that they make.